Before we begin, I want you to ask yourself a question. What if, at this very moment, someone deeply connected to your soul is experiencing a realization so powerful that it is changing the course of their life? What if they can no longer ignore what they feel? Most people believe that life changes through dramatic events that happen in the outside world. But the truth is that the most important transformations happen in silence. They happen in the hidden chambers of the mind, where old beliefs collapse, hidden truths emerge, and emotions that have been buried for years suddenly demand to be heard. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that everything you thought you understood was incomplete. Imagine discovering a truth that explains months or even years of confusion, a truth so undeniable that remaining silent is no longer possible. That is what may be happening right now. Somewhere, a person is confronting feelings they can no longer suppress. They are connecting pieces of a puzzle they never fully understood before. The masks are falling away. The excuses are losing their power. And for the first time, they are seeing something with complete clarity, because something big has happened. And when a profound truth finally rises from the depths of the unconscious mind, it changes everything. A sudden shift in energy is one of the most mysterious experiences a person can encounter, because it often happens without any visible warning. One day, everything appears normal, and the next day, something feels different deep within the psyche. This change is not always connected to an external event. In many cases, it begins in the unconscious mind long before the conscious mind becomes aware of it. The human personality contains hidden thoughts, emotions, desires, fears, and truths that remain beneath the surface of everyday awareness. These unseen forces continue to influence decisions, feelings, and perceptions, even when a person believes they are fully in control. Over time, the pressure created by these hidden forces grows stronger, and eventually, a moment arrives when the inner world can no longer remain the same. This sudden shift often occurs when a person encounters a truth that challenges their previous understanding of themselves or their life. It may come through a dream, a memory, an unexpected realization, or a moment of deep reflection. What makes this experience powerful is that it changes the way a person sees reality. The same people, situations, and relationships may still exist, but they are viewed through a completely different lens. The individual begins noticing meanings that were previously overlooked. Emotions that seemed confusing start making sense. Questions that once had no answers suddenly become clear. It is as if an invisible veil has been lifted, revealing something that was present all along but remained hidden from conscious awareness. When this shift happens, a person often feels an unusual sense of urgency. They may find themselves thinking about someone more frequently than before, or reflecting on experiences they had previously dismissed. The mind starts connecting pieces of a larger puzzle. Events that once appeared random begin to reveal patterns. This can be both exciting and unsettling because it forces the individual to confront aspects of themselves they may have avoided for a long time. The ego naturally prefers stability and familiarity, but genuine psychological growth often requires the disruption of old beliefs and assumptions. Many people resist these moments because they challenge comfortable narratives. It is easier to maintain familiar habits than to acknowledge a deeper truth. Yet the unconscious has a remarkable way of pushing important realities toward the surface. What has been ignored seeks recognition. What has been denied seeks expression. As this process unfolds, emotional intensity increases. Feelings become stronger, thoughts become clearer, and the desire for authenticity grows more powerful. The person may feel drawn toward conversations, decisions, or actions that previously seemed impossible. A sudden shift in energy does not mean that a person has instantly transformed into someone entirely different. Rather, it signifies that hidden parts of the self are moving into conscious awareness. The individual is beginning to integrate aspects of their personality that were once fragmented or suppressed. This integration creates a new sense of wholeness, allowing them to act with greater honesty and self-understanding. What once felt uncertain starts to feel meaningful. What once felt distant begins to feel important. The inner landscape changes, and because the inner world shapes perception, the outer world appears transformed as well. Such moments often mark the beginning of a profound psychological journey, one that leads a person closer to their authentic nature and a deeper understanding of the connections that truly matter in their life. An important realization rarely arrives all at once. It often develops quietly beneath the surface of awareness, growing through countless experiences, emotions, observations, and reflections. For a long time, a person may sense that something is changing within them, yet they cannot fully explain what it is. The conscious mind continues following familiar routines, while deeper layers of the psyche gather information and connect patterns that have gone unnoticed. Then, at a certain moment, everything comes together. What was once unclear suddenly becomes obvious. What was hidden becomes visible. The person sees a truth that can no longer be ignored, and this realization begins to reshape their understanding of themselves and their life. The human mind has a remarkable ability to avoid truths that feel uncomfortable. People often create explanations, distractions, and rationalizations to protect themselves from confronting difficult realities. This is not necessarily an act of dishonesty. It is often a psychological defense designed to preserve stability. The ego prefers certainty because certainty creates a sense of control. However, growth requires a person to move beyond these protective barriers. An important realization usually emerges when the individual becomes ready to face something they were previously unwilling or unable to acknowledge. This realization may concern their emotions, their relationships, their purpose, or their deepest desires. It may reveal that certain feelings have been present far longer than they admitted. It may expose patterns of behavior that repeatedly led them in the same direction. It may show them that what they have been seeking externally already exists within them. Whatever form it takes, the realization carries a unique sense of certainty. Unlike ordinary thoughts that come and go, it possesses an emotional weight that makes it impossible to dismiss. One of the most powerful aspects of such a realization is that it changes perception. The external world remains the same, but the way it is interpreted becomes different. Events that once seemed meaningless begin to reveal significance. Past experiences suddenly make sense in a new context. Conversations, memories, and decisions that appeared unrelated start forming a coherent story. The individual recognizes connections that were always present but remained hidden because they lacked the perspective necessary to see them. This process can be both liberating and challenging. On one hand, there is relief in finally understanding something that has been causing confusion. The mind no longer needs to struggle against uncertainty because the truth has become visible. On the other hand, realization often demands responsibility. Once a person knows the truth, they can no longer honestly pretend they do not. Awareness creates an obligation to respond. It calls for change, action, or at the very least, a willingness to acknowledge reality as it is, rather than as one wishes it to be. The emotional impact of an important realization can be profound. A person may feel excitement, fear, hope, regret, gratitude, or even sadness, sometimes all at the same time. This mixture of emotions occurs because the realization affects multiple layers of the personality. It challenges old assumptions while opening new possibilities. It closes certain doors while revealing others that were previously invisible. The individual begins to recognize that their future may depend on how they respond to this newfound understanding. As awareness deepens, authenticity becomes increasingly important. The person starts valuing truth over illusion and meaning over convenience. They become less interested in maintaining appearances and more interested in living in alignment with what they genuinely feel and know. The realization becomes a turning point. not because it changes the world around them, but because it transforms the way they relate to that world and to themselves. Emotional urgency is a powerful psychological experience that emerges when feelings that have been suppressed, ignored, or misunderstood can no longer remain hidden beneath the surface. It is not simply a moment of strong emotion, it is the growing pressure of the inner world demanding recognition. For a long time, a person may attempt to maintain control over their emotions by distracting themselves with responsibilities, routines, or rational explanations. They may convince themselves that certain feelings are temporary, unimportant, or better left unexpressed. Yet emotions possess a life of their own. What is pushed into the shadows does not disappear. Instead, it continues to exist within the unconscious, influencing thoughts, behaviors, and perceptions in subtle ways until the moment arrives when it seeks expression. The human psyche naturally strives for balance. When there is a significant difference between what a person truly feels and what they allow themselves to acknowledge, inner tension begins to accumulate. This tension can remain hidden for months or even years. During this period, the individual may notice occasional signs that something deeper is happening. Certain memories may return repeatedly. Particular thoughts may appear without warning. Encounters with specific people may evoke emotions that seem stronger than the situation itself would justify. These experiences are often signals from the deeper layers of the mind, attempting to bring something important into awareness. As this internal pressure grows, the emotional energy becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. The person may find themselves thinking about the same issue repeatedly, searching for answers they cannot seem to find. What once felt distant begins to feel immediate. What once seemed manageable becomes impossible to overlook. This is the beginning of emotional urgency. It is the moment when the unconscious mind pushes a truth toward consciousness with such intensity that avoidance is no longer effective. One reason emotional urgency feels so powerful is that it often arrives after a significant realization. When a person finally understands something important about themselves, their emotions quickly reorganize around that understanding. Feelings that were once fragmented become focused. Uncertainty begins to transform into clarity. The individual suddenly recognizes what truly matters to them, and this recognition creates momentum. They no longer have the luxury of remaining emotionally detached because the truth has become too visible to ignore. This urgency is not necessarily driven by fear or desperation. In many cases, it arises from authenticity. Deep within every individual exists a desire to live in harmony with what is real. When someone realizes they have been denying an important feeling, avoiding a meaningful connection, or resisting a necessary change, the desire for alignment grows stronger. Emotional urgency is often the psyche's attempt to restore that alignment. It encourages the person to move closer to honesty, even if doing so requires vulnerability and courage. The experience can be both exciting and unsettling. Exciting because clarity often brings a sense of purpose and direction. Unsettling because acting upon genuine feelings requires risk. The individual may fear rejection, misunderstanding, or the possibility that their truth will disrupt the stability they have worked hard to maintain. Yet despite these fears, the emotional pressure continues to build. The deeper self recognizes that growth is impossible without expression. What remains hidden cannot be integrated, and what is not integrated cannot contribute to genuine psychological wholeness. As emotional urgency intensifies, a person often becomes more aware of the gap between their inner reality and their outward behavior. They begin to notice where they have been withholding honesty, avoiding important conversations, or suppressing emotions that deserve acknowledgement. This awareness creates a strong desire to communicate, connect, and bring hidden truths into the open. The need is not merely to speak, but to be understood. It is not merely to express emotion, but to align one's outer life with one's inner reality. In this way, emotional urgency becomes a force that pushes the individual toward greater self-awareness, deeper authenticity, and a more truthful relationship with the feelings that have been waiting patiently to be heard. The end of inner conflict is one of the most significant psychological shifts a person can experience, because it marks the moment when opposing forces within the mind begin to move toward harmony. For a long time, many individuals live with a silent battle taking place beneath the surface of their daily lives. One part of them desires growth, truth, and authentic expression, while another part seeks safety, predictability, and protection from emotional risk. These competing forces create tension that may not always be visible to others, yet they influence nearly every decision, thought, and feeling. The individual may feel uncertain about what they truly want, confused about the direction they should take, or trapped between different possibilities that seem equally important. Inner conflict often develops when a person's conscious beliefs are not fully aligned with their deeper emotional reality. They may tell themselves one story while secretly feeling another. They may attempt to follow a path that appears logical while ignoring the voice of their deeper instincts. The conscious mind values order and control, but the unconscious contains desires, fears, memories, and truths that do not always fit neatly into the narratives people create about themselves. When these different aspects of the psyche pull in opposite directions, confusion naturally arises. This confusion can persist for a long time because the mind is remarkably skilled at creating explanations that justify avoidance. A person may convince themselves that they need more time, more information, or more certainty before making an important decision. While careful consideration can be valuable, it sometimes becomes a way of delaying confrontation with a truth that already exists. The individual continues moving in circles, revisiting the same thoughts and questions repeatedly, hoping that clarity will arrive from the outside rather than from within. As experiences accumulate, however, the unconscious continues its work. It observes patterns, stores emotional impressions, and gathers insights that may not yet be fully conscious. Dreams, intuitions, unexpected emotional reactions, and recurring thoughts often serve as messages from these deeper layers of the psyche. Although the conscious mind may resist these messages, their influence gradually grows stronger. Over time, the contradictions that once seemed manageable become increasingly difficult to ignore. The individual begins to notice that certain explanations no longer satisfy them and that familiar defenses are losing their effectiveness. The end of inner conflict often begins with a realization that cuts through confusion. It is not necessarily the discovery of new information, but the recognition of something that was already present. Suddenly, what seemed complicated becomes simple. The person sees the source of their struggle with greater clarity. They understand why they have felt divided and why certain emotions have remained unresolved. The competing voices within the psyche begin to lose their opposition because they are now being understood rather than resisted. This process brings a profound sense of relief. Mental energy that was previously consumed by uncertainty becomes available for growth and start of action. Instead of constantly questioning themselves, the individual develops a stronger sense of direction. They no longer feel compelled to analyze every possibility because they have gained confidence in their deeper understanding. The endless cycle of doubt begins to slow, replaced by a growing trust in their own perceptions and feelings. Clarity does not mean that every challenge disappears. Life remains complex, and difficult decisions still require courage. However, the individual now approaches those challenges from a place of greater wholeness. Their thoughts, emotions, and values begin working together rather than against one another. This alignment creates a sense of inner stability that is not dependent on external circumstances. The person feels more grounded because they are no longer fighting themselves. They become more capable of making decisions that reflect their authentic nature rather than decisions driven solely by fear, expectation, or avoidance. The end of inner conflict represents the movement from fragmentation toward integration, where the different parts of the personality begin to cooperate, creating a deeper sense of self-understanding, emotional balance, and psychological unity. A call for authentic connection emerges when a person begins to recognize that superficial interactions and carefully constructed masks can no longer satisfy the deeper needs of the soul. Human beings naturally desire connection, but not all connections are created equally. Many relationships are built upon expectations, social roles, convenience, or the image people wish to project to the world. While these forms of interaction may provide comfort and stability, they often leave something essential untouched. Deep within the psyche exists a longing to be seen, understood, and accepted for who one truly is, rather than for the character one presents to others. When this longing becomes strong enough, it creates a powerful desire for authenticity. Throughout life, individuals develop various personas to navigate society. These personas help them adapt to different environments and fulfill different responsibilities. A person may present one version of themselves at work, another with friends, and yet another within their family. These social masks are not inherently false. They serve important functions. However, problems arise when a person becomes so identified with these external roles that they lose contact with their genuine feelings, desires, and inner truth. The distance between the public self and the authentic self gradually grows, creating a sense of emptiness that cannot be explained by external circumstances alone. The psyche naturally seeks wholeness, and because of this, it constantly encourages individuals to move closer to their authentic nature. This process often begins subtly. A person may start feeling dissatisfied with conversations that remain on the surface. They may notice that certain relationships feel incomplete despite appearing successful from the outside. They may become increasingly aware that they are hiding important parts of themselves in order to maintain approval or avoid vulnerability. These feelings are often signs that the deeper self is calling for something more meaningful. Authentic connection requires courage because it involves revealing aspects of oneself that cannot be controlled or perfectly managed. When people wear masks, they can carefully shape how others perceive them. They can avoid rejection by presenting only the qualities they believe will be accepted. Authenticity removes some of that protection. It asks the individual to express genuine thoughts, emotions, and truths even when there is no guarantee of understanding or acceptance. This vulnerability can feel uncomfortable because it challenges the ego's desire for certainty and control. At the same time, authentic connection offers something that superficial interaction cannot provide. It allows individuals to experience genuine recognition. When another person sees the real self rather than the carefully constructed image, a deeper bond becomes possible. Such connections are often transformative because they create a sense of psychological validation. The individual no longer feels compelled to hide significant parts of their identity. Instead, they experience the freedom that comes from being known and accepted as they truly are. As self-awareness increases, the desire for authenticity often becomes stronger. A person begins to recognize that meaningful relationships depend upon honesty, openness, and emotional presence. They understand that true connection cannot exist where there is constant concealment. The more they learn about themselves, the more they feel drawn toward interactions that reflect that understanding. Conversations become more sincere. Emotional barriers begin to weaken. The need to maintain appearances gradually loses its importance. This call for authentic connection is not merely a desire for companionship. It is a deeper psychological movement toward alignment between the inner and outer worlds. The individual seeks relationships that support truth rather than illusion, growth rather than avoidance, and understanding rather than performance. As this process unfolds, they become increasingly willing to let go of relationships, habits, and patterns that require them to deny their authentic nature. The desire to be genuinely seen and genuinely understood becomes stronger than the fear of vulnerability, creating the conditions for deeper intimacy, emotional honesty, and a more meaningful experience of human connection. A turning point in the journey is a moment of profound psychological significance because it marks the transition from one stage of inner development to another. Unlike ordinary events that come and go without leaving a lasting impact, a turning point alters the direction of a person's life from the inside out. It is not always dramatic or visible to others. In many cases, the most important transformations occur silently within the depths of the psyche, where old beliefs begin to dissolve and new understandings emerge. These moments often arrive unexpectedly, yet they are rarely accidental. They are usually the result of countless experiences, emotions, struggles, and realizations that have been accumulating beneath the surface for a long time. Every individual follows a unique psychological journey. Along this path, there are periods of growth, confusion, resistance, discovery, and change. At certain stages, a person may feel stuck between who they have been and who they are becoming. The familiar ways of thinking no longer provide satisfaction, yet the new direction has not fully revealed itself. This in-between state can feel uncomfortable because it challenges the need for certainty and stability. However, it is often during these periods of uncertainty that the foundations of alt transformation are quietly being prepared. A major event frequently acts as the catalyst that brings this hidden process into conscious awareness. The event itself may vary from person to person. It could be an unexpected conversation, a powerful emotional experience, a significant loss, an important realization, or even a moment of deep reflection. What matters is not the external event alone, but the psychological response it triggers. Suddenly, something shifts within the individual. They begin to see themselves, their relationships, or their life circumstances from a completely different perspective. What once seemed acceptable may no longer feel aligned with their deeper truth. What once appeared impossible may suddenly seem necessary. This shift often creates a sense of awakening. Patterns that remained invisible become clear. Behaviors that were once automatic are examined more closely. The individual starts recognizing how past experiences have shaped their beliefs and choices. They become aware of the gap between the life they have been living and the life that feels authentic to their deeper nature. This awareness can be both liberating and challenging because it requires them to confront truths that may have been avoided for a long time. A turning point is significant because it changes the relationship between the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. Ideas, emotions, and insights that were previously hidden begin moving into awareness. The person develops a stronger understanding of their motivations, fears, desires, and values. As these different parts of the self become more integrated, a new sense of clarity emerges. Decisions that once felt confusing begin to make sense. Priorities become easier to identify. The individual feels increasingly guided by an inner compass rather than by external expectations alone. This process often inspires action. The person may feel compelled to make changes that reflect their new understanding. They may seek greater honesty in their relationships, pursue goals that feel more meaningful, or release patterns that no longer support their growth. The energy that was previously tied up in confusion and inner conflict becomes available for a movement and transformation. What was once merely an unconscious possibility becomes a conscious choice, and the journey begins to unfold in a new direction shaped by awareness, authenticity, and a deeper connection to the